Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. I, of course, am Hammer, the founder of Originator Success, Grab and Go Social, and Rate Sensei. Remember, you can join me live each and every weekday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Facebook or on YouTube, talking about what's going on in the mortgage world. We're going to talk a little bit about rates. We're going to talk about the CPI report from tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Fed meeting next week. So we got a few different things to chat about this morning. If you're here and you're live, say good morning. If you're watching on the replay, don't forget, give me a hashtag replay in the comments. If you would like a quick reminder that I'm going live, I do send out a text message each morning as I go live. You can sign up for that at hmmr.io/reminder. Don't worry, you won't get any trigger leads. We don't use your phone number for any nefarious purposes. And if it's easier, you can use this cool QR code that's over here. There you go. It's over here. And if you're on your phone right now, take a screenshot, go to your photos, and that QR code will work. Isn't that cool? I love the way technology has come along. So anyway, if you're here this morning, say good morning. Let me know that you're here. Let's go ahead and say hi to the live folks before we jump in and get started. Let's see. We got Mike Tebow here this morning. Good morning, sir. We got Nicole Semerad, Robert Bashirs. Good morning. Holly Johnson and Mike Brown. Great to have you here. Angela Walters. And let's see. Ron Siegel says, today we celebrate National Boston Cream Pie Day. Boston Cream Pie. I thought it was just a donut. I didn't know that Boston Cream. I guess Boston Cream Pie, is it still chocolate and custard? Right? Isn't that what Boston cream is? We've asked before about what's your favorite pie. There's a lot of food. These favorite holidays, these national holidays, Ron, they're definitely, I think this has been sponsored by Big Food and Big Sugar. Is Big Sugar a thing? I'm making Big Sugar a thing. So anyway, good morning, y'all. Sean Segaloff. Yeah, go Patriots. We'll give the Pats a little shout out today. They are doing well. Drake May looking like a real deal. Bill Belichick looking like a real bust. When Tom Brady and Bill broke up, we knew we were going to see who was the real winner out of that one, and it looks like it was Tom. That's what I got to say. Good morning, Bill Stevens, Debbie Richardson, Alamir Krivdick. Great to have all of you here. Yeah, Segaloff has it. National holidays brought to you by Weight Watchers. And Siegel says, I've beaten anorexia, so I choose the food items. Yeah. Listen, you've beaten anorexia, but you're also doing really well with beating heart disease, lowering your weight and getting healthy. So good for you, man. Good for you. So, all right, my friends, well, let's go ahead. Let's jump in and get started this morning. Let's share the screen. We're going to start off with the technicals. And let me pull this up over here. Here you go here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and let's start with the technicals this morning. We'll get into what we got going on. Quick recap. Mortgage bonds yesterday were unable to, where's my Presentify? Was it not working? All right, let's reload it. Presentify. There you go. Okay. All right, so taking a look here, everything in front of the purple line, this is all what happened yesterday. Mortgage bond pricing came out here, improved a little bit on the afternoon and ended the day up just a bit. You can see actually we ended yesterday at 101.31 is where we ended the day yesterday. Right here on the highlight, you'll see at 101.31. Why is that important? Because Hammer, 101.31 is higher than 101.29, but yet you said mortgage bonds were unable to break through resistance. When it is that much of a difference, it's not really breaking through. It's kind of like right there. Remember, we look at basis points, but when these are traded, they're traded in ticks, which is 30 seconds. So it's actually rounded. And I mean, we're like right there. There's really no difference. And we would want to see some kind of a continuation and confirmation. But this morning, we're seeing 101.25. It couldn't stay above that. So we're not counting that as a true break above the technical resistance level. Again, we're watching to see, can bonds push their way higher? We want to see mortgage bonds push up. We're also watching the 10-year treasury yield right here. 3.98 is what we are sitting on at the moment. 3.98. As long as we're staying below that magic 4.0 number, as long as we're staying below 4, that's a good sign. If we see this go above 4, you're going to want to go ahead and consider locking loans closing in the next couple of weeks. So let me repeat that so that you guys, because anyone watching later, if we see the 10-year treasury yield break above today, then we want to consider locking loans closing in the next couple of weeks, because we could be capping out on rate sheets, and that's really what we are looking at right now. Let me tweak this over. Good morning, Yasmin, Brandy, Matt Rasner, Kenny Rivard, Tiffany. Good morning, all. Great to have you here. So let me pull this. There we go. We got that side. This side. Okay. So taking a look here, we look at pricing and rates and whatever. Let's change this to purple here. So 6.17 this morning. You're basically the same thing at 6.17. Mortgage-backed securities down a couple of basis points. We're really majoring in the minors, but rates have stalled. And as I put on this one, rate sheets are definitely stuck. We haven't really seen them improving. They're kind of holding steady, and we could be at the best rates, but we won't know until we know. And we'll only know when rates move a little bit higher. The thing is, rates are not at risk of moving significantly higher. When I use the term significant, I mean going with at least a quarter point. We are not at risk of seeing rates move higher. It's just not in the cards right now. But as we roll into next week, it could become more likely. So we do want to be aware of that. Reprice risk on the day is low today. We're not likely to get much movement ahead of tomorrow's CPI inflation data, but one more time, you do want to be watching this 10-year treasury yield. If we see this break above 4, you would want to consider locking loans closing in the next couple of weeks, because we could see rates creep higher. Anything with more time, a lot less concern on that. So let's see. Ron Siegel said, I was comparing bonds yesterday for an advisor. September 8th, mortgage-backed security 5.5 was at 101.28. Yesterday, it was at 101.29. Not a lot for us to talk about for that floating client. There were brief dips, but ho-hum. Yeah, it's not, and we're not likely to. Remember, right now, markets are currently pricing in. We're currently pricing in the idea that we're going to have a rate cut at the meeting next week. It's a 99% priced into the market, right? Same thing for December. Now look at this. That's actually different. This is a little bit lower than we've seen recently. So there's a little bit of an ebb to this. Let's see if it shows up enough in the compare feature. If we use the compare feature. Yeah. So even yesterday it was at 95.5%. This morning at 91%. And, just a week ago, it was only at 88%, but that's because there was an almost 12% expectation that we might even see a larger rate cut here. So we've seen some pullback in Fed futures. Fed futures not quite as rosy that they think that the Fed will be making these cuts as we go into January. It's still, though, 3.25 is the winner. There's a bigger expectation that we are going to be at yet another rate cut as we get into January. And by the time we get to March, markets definitely believe we'll be at 3.25. And there's already about a quarter that believe we'll see. This would be a fourth rate cut that we would get right here. So this would be a fourth rate cut. So looking at Fed futures and where we're at there, what we got going on. So we got the CPI inflation data coming out. Let's talk a little bit about that CPI inflation data. So there's, it's funny because I have to get these in order. Let's pull this one. Actually, we'll just do it here. I got it. So, all right. So the CPI inflation data. U.S. shutdown threatens to erode the quality of important inflation data. Now, remember, this CPI data was supposed to be coming out on October 15th. Instead, it's coming out on October, what is tomorrow? The 24th. However, this is still September data. All right. This is September data. Now, in this article from Bloomberg, they go into kind of a little bit of detail on how that data is collected and when it's collected, right? So the information, the Bureau of Labor Statistics gathers information about roughly 80,000 items across the country, mostly done in person through 3 10-day periods throughout the month. Well, when was this done for September data? That's right, September. So they had to bring back staff. They had to recall staff to go over the data, but the staff that was recalled was to compile the data and come up with the actual CPI report. And again, the reason the CPI report has to be done while other labor market data, economic data, anything else that the government puts together is not being done is because this data needs to be used for the Social Security cost of living increase for 2026. Why do they use 1 month? That's a great question. I don't think that's the most accurate. I think they should be averaging where it was for the year, but I don't set the rules and we're not gonna change anything. So we won't go too deep on that one. But when we're looking at the CPI data, now again, there's concerns that this data would come in light, but if you believe that the staff that's here did their job properly, the people that were recalled, then there's no reason for this to be any more or less accurate than it would normally be. So, but I'll tell you what though, the here's what I do. Oh, actually, look, the Social Security Administration uses third quarter CPI data to determine the cost of living adjustment. So they do at least, all right, so they're using a quarter. So the quarter would be July, August, September, right? That's the third quarter. So that's why it's the last part of the third quarter. So let me roll back and correct my previous statement. And there you go. That looks like we have that. However, what data is not being collected? October data. So when it comes to the October data that is going to come out in November, how are we going to have October data if the data isn't being collected? If it's so labor intensive and it takes, all of these employees and it takes 3 10-day periods a month, we're really going to see a big change with the next report. So, anyone disagree? Ron, I think so. Again, there's always a little bit of a delay. So I think we answered this. They do it based on the third quarter. The Social Security Administration uses third quarter CPI data to determine whether it is the annual change or whatever. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure if we click this, it'll tell us more about how it's done in the latest cost of living adjustment. Specifies a formula determining each COLA based on increases in the consumer price index on a monthly basis. Blah, blah, blah. So the average for the third quarter of the current year to average for the third quarter of the last year. So it's year over year in which the cost of living became effective. If there's an increase, it's rounded to the nearest 10th. If there's no increase, it's rounded to 0 and there's no cost of living increase. So it'll be this year over last year rounded to the nearest 10th. And that's where we come up with that one. So, all right. Anyway, so I don't think this data. Now, that rolls back to the other article, though, which was even if we do get this data, it's unlikely that it's going to matter much in the scheme of things. It's certainly not going to change the expectation of a Fed rate cut to come in next week's meeting. It probably will not make much of a dent in expectation to come in the December meeting, but it could. If this goes down, then that's going to cause rate sheets to get slightly worse. If this goes higher, it won't cause any change at all because we're kind of there. So keep that in mind. And then we'll be looking at the January one. If we see expectation of another third rate cut to come in January, if this goes up, that's going to help mortgage rates. If this goes down and this column where there's no cut goes up, then that's going to hurt pricing a little bit. Again, we're not at risk of seeing rates really move higher. Maybe 1/8 of a point, not into the high sixes for sure. So nothing to worry about that, but anybody that loses some ground. So that does put us in that same spot where we need to lock up anything closing near term or risk averse because we don't know what's going to happen. Mike said, doesn't the BLS use a sample week to get numbers, not a month? I don't know a ton about it, Mike. I'm just looking at what they say here. And according to here is it's done through 3 10-day periods throughout the month. That's how they say it. I'm sure we could dig into, if you go to the BLS's website, I'm sure we could get more information on exactly how it's done. It doesn't matter to me how it's done, though. I mean, so I didn't do too much research on that. Is it ironic that they used the first look at data when we know they revised twice after the initial print? Yes, it is ironic. Sample week on the NFP report. Yeah, the non-farm payroll, I think, is a sample week, not the CPI. So that's what we've got going on. So, all right, my friends. Well, anyway, that's what we've got. So rates are at a crossroads, but only to move a small amount. We definitely want to keep watching. Why does it keep switching to the damn arrow? No, I don't want dictation now either. Ugh, too many things. All right. Let's go back to yellow. Let's go here. All right. So we're watching that 10-year treasury yield. We're watching mortgage bonds. We want to see this break above 101.29 is what we're looking for. And we want to see this one stay below 4 is what we're looking for. So as long as we got all that going on, it's all good stuff. And we're not going to be in too bad of a situation. Robert said it's never correct, revised by hundreds of thousands to millions, causing the market to shudder at least the last few years. Yeah, if you're talking about CPI or are we talking about, I mean, all the data is revised, and they argue it's because they continue to get data in and the data is more accurate. So, but we will see. So anyway, I don't think that I think some of these are very confusing. As far as the other stuff, government shutdown, not likely to see any change anytime soon. There's lots of articles about who Trump is paying, and he's paying, border security and things out of money that's already been allotted. And, instead of paying all the different things. And it's funny, there's definitely a lot of agenda in a lot of the articles I read, a lot of political agenda on these. No joke. The other thing to note is that people are going without paychecks. SNAP benefits will not be done. I don't know about y'all. I've seen a lot of concern about that, but I don't know if that would affect the larger economy. I mean, will it mean less spending? And, could it be enough to show up in reports? Well, we will see. We will definitely see. But overall, we're not at risk of seeing rates move anytime soon, so nothing we have to worry about with that. But those of you at Fuse, if you're at Fuse, give a shout out. Let me know. I'd love to hear if you're at Fuse. My numbers look to be a little bit lower today, so it might be some folks out at Fuse. But if you're at Fuse, I am not at Fuse. I am getting ready tomorrow. I will be coming to you from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I am spending the weekend with my wife and some friends, glamping. That's like pretending like we're going to camp, but I don't camp. I usually rent a cabin at a campground is what I do. I don't even have a camper. So good morning, Rob Stewart. So let me know what y'all are at. I'm going to keep it kind of short tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to go over the CPI inflation data, but I am going to keep it short. I don't want to spend 20 minutes on while I'm away with my wife. I'm going to keep it a little bit tighter. So make sure if you do jump on tomorrow, try to jump on time, or else you can catch the replay. And yeah, Ron, political agenda in the media. Surprise. Everyone's got an agenda. So, all right, my friends, my agenda is to wrap it up. I'll see you tomorrow. I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.